Hey guys, it's McKernan. Thanks for checking in. Today I want to talk about the whole notion of clarity, or lack of clarity as the case may be. And I think I've yet to meet any human being that at some level is not seeking clarity about an aspect of their life, whether it's the work they do, the relationships they have externally, or even some clarity within themselves in terms of their own story and their own relationship with themselves. As weird as that sounds for many to have a relationship with yourself, but I won't get into that today. So clarity is something that often stifles people, holds people back. They often think that clarity about a specific thing is kind of almost eludes them. It's almost so far away it feels like it's insurmountable, and as a result of that it can often stifle our ability to actually continue to live and enjoy life and move through life. And often people put their life on hold and hit a pause button in the context of their own happiness and engagement and fulfillment while they wait for this magical happiness or this magical clarity in order to actually show up. So I want to share a couple of things with you, not necessarily to offer you a solution. And by the way, for those heady people and those people who live up here all the time, God love you. In my most compassionate voice, some of my videos are going to kind of do your head in because I don't give you the 3 specific steps to fix yourself. And there is a difference between kind of like knowledge and wisdom. If you want knowledge, just go to Google and don't waste your time watching my videos. But if you want wisdom in terms of how to fundamentally emotionally shift your being and your ability to walk and live through this life, well then maybe be open to the fact that there is no ribbon that can be tied in a beautiful bow all of the time, that sometimes you need to actually get outside of just understanding the mechanics of something and actually allow yourself to get out of that space to actually fundamentally shift, so the same thing doesn't repeat itself. Anyway, a couple of things I want to offer you on clarity is this, is I often say in the absence of clarity, take action. So again, I'm repeating myself here for those of you who watch my videos on a regular basis, but sometimes the clarity is just not going to show up on its own, and sometimes you just need to take action. So the action basically in a sense is doing something, and ironically the theory being is that you step forward, you take action, and you're going to get additional clarity. That's all that's going to happen. It may not be the clarity you want, it may be the clarity that you do want, but in essence you've only got one outcome, and that is additional clarity. But leaving aside, because I've talked about that before, really what I want to talk to you is 2 things. One is about looking back as opposed to constantly looking forward. So when we think about clarity, quite often, if not almost all of the time, we're considering clarity about something we face today or something we're facing in the future. And we're looking for clarity in the future. Clarity today in order to take a step into the future. Clarity in the future about what we should be doing today. But I'm going to encourage you to look back. And I'm going to share 2 little stories, 2 little nuances with you. Number one was years ago I had my stag party, and I remember at the time being questioned and to some extent judged by the idea of actually bringing a group of guys to the west coast of Ireland and doing a kind of a little crazy workshop and then doing this stunning hike through the hills of Ireland. And it wasn't a particularly nice day, but we basically walked this 5,000-year-old green road, as it's called, through the hills, and it kind of meandered through the west coast of Ireland. And I remember that having such an impact on my life and such an impact on my existence. And we're talking, I always say in my videos 10 years ago. My wife says, God, you had some year 10 years ago, because I'm shitty on dates. But I think it was, 10 or 11 or 12 years ago. Who really cares right now? And I remember it having such an impact, and I wouldn't lie to you to say that, oh my God, it was at that moment I decided I was going to bring a group to Ireland years later and create some sort of retreat experience and actually walk that green road. That'd be a lie. But somewhere along the line, I didn't let go of that dream, because it created kind of almost an imprint in my soul, as I say, and it created such an impact. But quite often we ignore those impactful moments, and we all have them. If we look back over our lives, these are signposts. These are things that are insights into our soul, insights into our heart that are telling us these are things that we're aligned to. These are things that are, that we should explore. These are opportunities of things that maybe are giving us some kind of indication that these are experiences that we are aligned to, in essence. And I remember, working on myself and doing a lot of that kind of personal growth journey and creating that space for this kind of little voice, this little whisper, as I often call it, from your soul, because your soul and your intuitiveness is whispering at you all the time. But in a crazy busy world, we don't listen to the whisper. We're too busy listening to the shouts on Facebook, the screams on Twitter, and the screams on the street. And we give our attention to all these outside influences because we're so busy trying to get attention from everybody and feeling validated that we don't listen to that little whisper that's going on in your intuitiveness. He's not the right guy for you. he's not the right person for you. She's not the right fit for you. You shouldn't be doing this job. It's not right for you. And you should be doing this. And we don't listen to that whisper because we're too busy, and we stay too busy, and we keep moving, and we move back up into our head, and busy people and heady people are hiding or moving away from something because you know what, it's safe up here. So look back over your life and consider, because when the impact of that experience in the west coast of Ireland, when I allowed it the space, somewhere in there came the inspiration for a retreat I run on the west coast of Ireland. And in some shape or form, it was influenced by something that happened 12 years ago. Another one was I went to Sri Lanka in, again, I'm going to say 10 or 12 years ago. I actually think my wife corrected me recently and said it was 12 years ago. And I spent a day in an orphanage there, and that actually inspired an event or an experience I just ran recently where we went to Guatemala and spent a week working with kids and orphans there and so on and so forth. So often we think about clarity as something in the future. I'd love you to stop and look back over some of the most influencing moments that impacted you, that just created this imprint in your soul. And if you quieten yourself down and you stop looking forward and stop goal setting and stop obsessing about, you know, the future, and put your bucket list aside and just look back over your life and look at some of the things that made such an impact in you. And then ask yourself one single question. Why did they have such an impact on me? Why? And when you understand the why, then you start to allow it to percolate into every part of your being. And it starts to kind of penetrate the more intuitiveness, the more feeling aspect of who you are, as opposed to just in your head. Because when you're in your head, there's every reason why a retreat on the west coast of Ireland may or may not make sense, why bringing people to Guatemala may or may not make sense. But when you live from here, and by the way, I'm not pretending I do all the time, but when I do get into here, you get rewarded, because the week I just had in Guatemala was absolutely extraordinary. Not because I ran it, not because I put it together, but because I trusted my intuition, I leaned into it. And thankfully, you know, a bunch of brave souls who had this desire to give and give back to humanity and therefore grow as a human, followed me and supported me and stepped in and courageously went and trusted me. So that's the reward you get when you follow what it is inside your soul. So there's a couple of things that, you know, in the absence of clarity, take action. Look back over your life. It's almost like Back to the Future. Look back in your life and look at some of the things that have influenced you and some of the things that impacted you, because that can give you a tremendous amount of insight into today. And then the final piece about clarity, and I know I'm getting into a long-winded way, but it's important, is, you know, the really important thing is to consider that the clarity you say you don't have, you do have. And it's so simple. But if you stop the train of thought, the conversation, say, oh, I don't know what the clarity is, I don't know what if you just let that go and just say, actually, you know what, there's some part of me that does have the clarity, but maybe I don't want to see it for whatever reason. It scares you, you don't understand it, it's significant, you're pushing it. Quite often the clarity we say we don't want it at all, because it means that change is, you know, around the corner, or we need to change. And if we can understand our clarity, and for example, we see this, well, if I could find my dream job, then I'd leave my shitty job. I mean, I just find that a bizarre perspective in life. Leave your shitty job and see what happens, and see, will your self-value, your self-worth, will you be creating emotional, physical and mental space to allow a dream job, whatever that dream job is, or something else to come into your life? Do you continue to go out with somebody in a dysfunctional relationship? Do you continue to date that person, go out with that person, live with that person, stay in a marriage with that person, on the assumption that you'll get rid of that person or you'll move on from that relationship when the right person comes along? Of course you don't. So the same principle applies, but I would encourage you to consider that the clarity you say you seek, the clarity that eludes you right now, is literally at the end of your nose or just under your skin. And just be open to that, because when you open up that possibility, it's interesting to see what happens to your psyche in terms of the permission you give yourself for the actual clarity to emerge.